lot of fun. So we've been through a whole lot of ground over the last couple of episodes. So if you have missed out, feel free. I'll get one of the mods to pop in the previous episodes list into the chat. And it'd be good to kind of get a feel for those. So if you haven't seen the first couple of episodes, go and check them out to go ahead and catch up and things like that. And that would be awesome.
So this week we're going to do the API gateway. But before we jump on, I just want to run a bit of a reminder. So if you want to receive weekly resources, like reminder or links and stuff, you can subscribe on the show, subscribe on the page. But there's a catch, as we mentioned in the last show. The language preference for at the moment on the show is only working for English. So if you have subscribed and not receiving emails at the moment, let us know or change the language preference to English. And we are working on it to support other languages.
Yeah, so just thought it'd be good to check in to see where everyone's coming from. I'm coming from Melbourne, Australia. May, where are you?
I am in Sydney.
Okay, Sydney, awesome. So where's everyone coming from? Pop into the chat.
Yeah.
Let us know where you're coming from.
I saw someone Simmer
Auckland,
UK.
Awesome.
Someone say it's a CDK.
Reston, Vancouver,
but we're going through
USA, Houston, Texas, New Jersey. Hey, Seattle.
Yeah.
All right, this is for Thursday for you all over there. That's awesome. All right, India, California, Boston,
New York.
Fantastic. Awesome. So many amazing places. Can't wait for be able to travel again and get to see some of these.
All these
awesome
places.
Boston, I was hanging out there last year. Love Boston.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Italy, Mexico.
Yeah, so many awesome places there. Italy, nice.
Space station.
Dallas, perfect. Jamaica, awesome.
Nice.
So it's cool. All right. It's great to see the amazing number of locations we've got here. So we also wanted to get a bit of a gauge from everybody in terms of how are you with your AWS dev journey? Is this the first episode that you've attended? Have you attended some of our other episodes? Pop in the answers 1, 2, 3, 4 into the chat. Let us get a feel for where you are in the AWS dev hour journey. Awesome.
Have you been building on the dev hour journey, cloning the repo and deploying stuff, playing around? We have a lot of responses that you, like the audience, have seen both the episodes. That is amazing. That is so good.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and thanks for coming back, though.
So good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're having a lot of fun, and we hope you are enjoying it as well. Just going through the build together. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and we definitely want you to call us out on it as we go through. If you see a typo, remember from the previous episode, you can call out !typo into the chat, and it will call us out on it. So feel free to take advantage of those as we go through the show. So
keep your
awesome. So keep your responses coming in. So we've got a good mix. So if you are new to the show, so noticing,
is that a typographical error?
And thank you for testing that out. That's awesome. So it is working. And just to let you know, if somebody types in the chat, it does kind of go to sleep for a while, so we don't get too many coming in. So it'll kind of sleep for 20 seconds or so, just so we don't get too many of those. But definitely call us out. So some great unique votes there. Just having a look through. So if you are new for the first time, as we mentioned, go and check out the previous 2 episodes to catch up. You can definitely go ahead and do that. But as of today, you can jump into the repo on GitHub and you can go and clone that. And the code is also inclusive from the previous episode. So you can definitely catch up from there. And if you want to go through the build process and the decision-making process that we had throughout those as well, go and check that out. Go and clone the repo and catch up and work along and build with us. We'd love you to. And we'd love you to contribute as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there's someone asked how many episodes were we there? There will be 8 episodes in total. And this is episode 3.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's awesome. So yes, it has changed since last week. So what we have done before each episode, what we tend to do is commit the code for that episode so that it gives you the opportunity to clone that at the start and work through the code that we're building in that episode. We want you to be able to kind of follow along, and we get it, granted, in a live show, like if it's a VOD, you can sort of pause it and type along as you go. But, in a live show, you're not going to have time to type. I'm pretty sure you won't be able to type that quickly. We certainly can't. So so we've given that to you ahead of time. So feel free to go and check that out. And clone the repo and pull the latest changes if you've already got it there.
Cool.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right.
Okay, so we've given you the homework last week, and also on the LinkedIn post, if you might have already noticed that we posted a poll on the LinkedIn post, on Ben's LinkedIn post, about, one of our hosts, one of us is going to eat a spoonful of Vegemite straight up.
Yeah.
And we asked you, who do you want to see one of us eating? You still have a chance to vote. I think it's still going.
You're trying to get the last minute vote. May's losing. That's why.
I know.
No. Okay, so feel free to definitely do that. But yeah, this became kind of an in joke because May's not a big fan of Vegemite. I love eating Vegemite. I have it on toast, but it is kind of a thing. If you've visited Australia before, Vegemite is a powerful taste, and a lot of visitors come to Australia and they'll smother their toast with Vegemite and then take a bite and go, "Whoa, these Aussies are crazy." That's okay. That's okay. We don't eat it like that. You eat a small amount. You brush it on the toast, really ever so lightly, and it's amazing. But when you eat a lot of it, it's intense. It's an intense flavor.
It's intense. But I have got a jar of Vegemite here.
Absolutely.
This is the smallest spoon I can find at home.
It's a teaspoon. It's valid, right? That's a pass.
So the vote was 60-40, 60% me and 40% Ben. But it's the last minute.
Awesome.
We can change the vote, so Ben has to eat the Vegemite, not me.
That's okay. Because
Okay,
it's coming in.
Aussie. Oi, oi, oi.
Awesome. Thanks for that. That's an awesome saying in Australia. So we're hitting up the Vegemite. But May, we are a team, so I'm going it with you.
Amazing.
I'm doing that. So should we go?
Okay.
Let's do it. All right.
Okay. I can start smelling like.
Okay. This is a fair teaspoonful. All right. Let's do it.
Can I? No.
Okay. That's It's very intense. You've gone the water already, mate. It's a great flavor. Actually, it's got some kick. It's got some kick. It kind of creeps up on you.
I'm
if you want to try it.
Vegemite.
That's awesome. Okay.
All right. I got.
All right. Good job.
Good job, Ben.
Yeah. Oh. Anyway, try it. If you come to Australia, try it. It is really nice. But don't smother. Just brush it on. It's packed full of vitamin B and things like that. All right. So let's go and take a look where we are in the show, in the build. So just jumping over here to our application. Oh, that's still still
no
filling
worries,
that.
mate.
No worries, mate. Let's check it out. So over in here, so this is what we're building. We just wanted to retouch because we know we've got some new people joining us for the first time today, and if you are, welcome. So this is the application we're building, and so far what we've done is we've built the asynchronous backend for this application, and in the last episode we went and built out our AWS Lambda function, which is performing the synchronous business logic for our application. So what we're doing now is this episode we're going to build our API, and so the application is this. It's about photograph management, and if we have a look through, and I'm streaming Twitch, so apologies. The sometimes these might be a bit slow when they're loading the full images, but the idea is that we've got a little CRUD-based interface here, so that we can go and upload images into our account into Amazon S3. and manage those images so we can delete them and things like that. And under photos, this is where we can go and get information about the images themselves, so we can kind of see what's in the image. So you can see here that it's adding labels. So when we upload the image into our account, the asynchronous backend will go and use Amazon recognition to detect the objects in that image. We're storing those in Amazon DynamoDB so that we can then, from our front-end application, see what is in that image. So it's kind of just a nice way of working out what it is that we've got. Click on the puppy, click on the puppy. That is a cute puppy. That is a cute puppy.
It is.
Yes, we've got a puppy Phil. That's awesome. So that is what we are building. So that's what we're going through during this episode. So if we go and flip back over, this episode is made all about the API. All right. And before we kind of jump into this, we wanted to just go through a quick discussion on the API choice. So throughout this episode, we're using Amazon API Gateway, and we just wanted to make a call out that there are a number of options here, right, mate? So when you're choosing an API, to build your modern application,
HTTP API.
Yeah,
we have REST API. WebSocket API. So there are a couple of APIs to choose from, and it comes down to the point, like, which one are we going to choose in which scenario, right?
Absolutely.
So in this episode, like the today's episode, we are using the REST API with the CDK. But maybe we should talk about HTTP API, because this is new, and like so
let's just, like, before we jump into it too heavily, so like just going through the definition of the API, right? When we're building applications, an API simplifies programming by abstracting the underlying implementation and only exposing objects or actions that the developer needs. That's the whole purpose of the API.
Exactly.
And there are different APIs out there, and we threw just a homework question out into LinkedIn earlier this morning so that you can kind of check that out. But we've got REST APIs, we've got GraphQL, which is was originally built by Facebook for their mobile applications, and then it was open sourced, and now it's being taken care of by the open source community and the CNCF as well. And the idea is that we've also got things like gRPC as well. So depending on what it is that we're building, like gRPC is quite often a popular choice for microservices integrations and things like that, because it's based on HTTP2. GraphQL is very much a data kind of great for data-rich applications, right?
It's very powerful in a way, building the GraphQL API as well, like the way you abstract the data, query the data and building those things. It's really changed the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and so if you think about Amazon API Gateway, so what we're talking about there is really, it's a fully managed service that allows you to build APIs that are really scalable and cover off a lot of the common challenges. So it's a fully managed service that makes it easy for us developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs at any scale. And so what we have, as May pointed out with Amazon API Gateways, we've actually got a couple of options here. We've got a standard REST API, which we're mostly all familiar with as developers. And we've also got a HTTP API available in here as well. And to cover off the differences between these two is probably important, because we've also got another third one here, which is WebSockets, as May also pointed out. And so as we're thinking about the type of API to use, often what we do is the first question would be, do you need WebSockets? If the answer is no, then often what we'd do kind of today would be, okay, does the HTTP API cover the feature set that you need? And I'll just ask the mods to pop out the link to the comparison, feature set comparison between HTTP and REST APIs in Amazon API Gateway. But HTTP was released last year, and it's a newer implementation that's about 60% faster and up to like 70% more cost effective than the REST API. But it doesn't yet have the full parity of feature set against it.
Yeah.
Now, in this application that we're building, we've gone for a REST API. And the main reason for that in this scenario is because building this application, the CDK constructs, we're building the whole lot in the CDK, and the package for the HTTP or the HTTP package is still experimental at this stage because it's quite new. It's quite a new service. And so, but you can switch that out. So we wanted to make that call, and there is, there are constructs there that we can use. So if you do want to switch these out, or if you're looking at doing this like at a production level, we'd suggest you go check this out, right, May? To kind of check out HTTP APIs. The other component here is GraphQL, which is definitely worth a mention here in modern applications, because if you've got modern applications that are, data rich, maybe you've got mobile applications, for example, that need to be less chatty, right? So if you've got REST APIs, one of the key things there is that sometimes, like for a given application, you'll be making a whole number of different requests across the network for data and getting quite large payloads back sometimes for data that you don't necessarily need all of. So what AppSync does is it allows you to expose one endpoint and at the back end have resolvers that will go and retrieve the information for you that you need and respond back with only the information that you need. So you it's a query language that sits on top of a schema and allows you to really define quite heavily. So you can make one request from your client, you specify what it is that you need via the way of a query or a mutation, or if you want, for example, a subscription, you can set up a subscription so you can have that real-time data, and you can request that. So it's like one request as opposed to multiple requests, and it's really good for modeling data. So if you're running like a social media application, for example, and you've got really constantly changing data and things like that, awesome. So it's a difficult split, right? There's, and that's which is why we put this.
I was gonna say, if you haven't tried out AppSync and GraphQL, please go and check it out. It's really cool service. I have built a few applications with AppSync and GraphQL. The way things set up, it's make it really easy for the developer to build it on the AWS. So please go and check it out. There are heaps of tutorials and labs on the GraphQL with AppSync, and is really good for the use case like mobile web application, like Ben mentioned. So yeah,
it can handle things like offline syncing and things like that. So if you've got users that are using the application offline, they're going through a tunnel or on a train, they're at a beach with no service or whatever it is, and you want to be able to synchronize that data back, it can handle those sorts of things, right?
Useful feature when you have a mobile applications and then you want to do the offline sync. In that case, like AppSync take the heavy lifting of the job of doing that. So developer can really focus on building the apps, and then the AppSync take care of that. So yeah,
I've still got that strong Vegemite taste in my mouth.
I know. I was just washing down with my tea.
Okay, all right. So that's a summary. Like, we're not going to get into too much detail here because this is a big conversation, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer. AppSync's kind of a newer kind of application to the party in terms of, GraphQL's a newer API implementation, but go and check it out. Do your research. AppSync could actually be a good use case for this application as well. So go and, check it out and definitely spend some time, modeling and thinking about the right tool for the right job, when you're going through this. Now, jumping into our last episode. So what we did in the last episode is we went and built our AWS Lambda function for the synchronous business logic. So this is the one that's going to be querying our Amazon DynamoDB table and things like that. And also, deleting assets, like deleting photos and resources in the back end. So to build that out, what we have chosen to do is, in this case, use Amazon API Gateway, mostly because, when we're thinking about this originally, it's a fairly CRUD-based, management-based kind of implementation, which can be a kind of RESTful kind of trait. Like I said, we could have used AppSync as well for this application, but we went with API Gateway in this scenario. And so what we're doing is we're basically building out this component in this episode so that we can integrate an API for our front-end application, our React application, with our AWS Lambda function in the back end.
Yeah, so if you remember, we in the last episode 2, we build out our Lambda functions. We go through what actually the Lambda function does. And now this one is to integrate the API gateway with the Lambda function.
Absolutely. And so with a RESTful API, as you know, we're dealing mostly with resources and methods like HTTP verbs. And for the most part, if you're doing like if you're using a GraphQL API, for example, you're doing posts and you're passing through a message body, and that's how you request information from. It's always a post. With a RESTful API, obviously, we can use different HTTP verbs. We're using delete and get in this scenario, so we've got two different verbs. So we're passing through some query strings, and essentially we're using the get request to get information from our Amazon DynamoDB table, and we're using the delete method to go ahead and delete objects and pass through again a query string to be able to do that. So to give you an idea, this is what our requests look like. So again, using query strings, so we've got our API resource, so in this case that's images, and we're passing through two parameters. So we've got an action, which is the either get labels or delete image in this case. And we're passing through the key, which is the Amazon S3 object key, or the image name, if you want to call it that, the file name that we want to actually go ahead and delete from the back end. So we'll go ahead and make for example, in this case, a get request to the endpoint. What that's going to do is we're going to have a Lambda integration. So that's going to invoke our Lambda function that we created last week. And it's going to invoke the handler function, and the query strings are going to be mapped to the event object so that we can then retrieve those query parameters in our Lambda function. And what we're going to do then is we're going to obviously fire off some business logic. And the core purpose here is we're basically doing a get item method against our Amazon DynamoDB table. Again, refer to last week's episode for more details on that, because we go through and build out that Lambda in that episode. And we're retrieving the information, and we're returning a JSON response, obviously, with the objects that are found inside that image. Sound good so far, May?
Yeah, it sounds good. I was going to say, like, when we build out the applications later on, we will go through all these steps, and we would test it out, see if that works, and see those responses coming back from the Lambda function through API gateway.
Absolutely.
So this is the second one, I guess.
This is the second one, and again, so this again, we're using a different verb. This is the delete verb for HTTP. We're passing through a different parameter for our query string. So this time it's delete image, and we're passing through again the same key this time around. And so we'll make that request. Again, invokes our Lambda function. We've got our event object, and we're going to use our business logic to go through and perform a couple of different operations there, a couple of different methods. So delete item from our DynamoDB table to remove that, and we're going to go and delete the objects from our two S3 buckets, mate.
Yeah. So if you remember last time, we have extended our Lambda function to have two buckets. One is to upload the original image, and then the second bucket is to store the resize images from the performance perspective. So when we do the delete here, we have to delete all of these resources when the user action the delete command. So we're going to delete all of these two buckets, objects in the bucket, and then the DynamoDB.
Yep. So we do the delete. The objects are removed from the bucket, and at the moment we're just returning a basic response saying that yes, this has been performed okay. So pretty straightforward. So that is back to the puppy, May. That was just by fluke. I didn't mean to bring the puppy back. We actually have one more. We actually have one more. Oh no, that was it. Yeah, that's good. All right, that's pretty much it where we're at. So May, cool. I guess
do we want to do the coding?
I think so. I think that's good. We're up to just getting back into the code.
Yeah,
so let's do it.
Code. All right. And then maybe a bit later we would do the challenge. So stick around. That would be another challenge.
6 minutes time. Challenge. All right.
Cool. So you
Puppy party. I know. Sorry for all the cat lovers. We didn't have a cat photo in there. We had a puppy.
Cool. So let's get into the code. So first, Ben mentioned we're going to use the API gateway from the CDK. So first thing first, we have to install the API gateway package. What I'm just gonna jump on is to installing npm install the API gateway. So I'm just gonna copy that. So first, install the API gateway, let it install. Hopefully it will go through fine. Next one is we have the package and we want to import the package into our CDK stack. So I've got a little snippet to import the API gateway, and we'll go through the pass-through behavior and import later.
Yeah,
we'll get through that.
And so, May, I just wanted to point out as well, just a super quick one. So we talked about the HTTP API integration before in terms of using a HTTP API. So this is a mock example demo code of what that would look like if we kind of were to convert this to HTTP. Like I said, we're not doing it at the moment because a lot of this, or the package is still experimental from a CDK perspective. So we haven't gone and implemented it. But if you are interested in going down that path because it is more performant and cost effective, as time goes on, this is what it looks like. So there's a different package to install, just wanted to kind of throw that out there as
that is
an
a
extra
good call out there.
Tidbit of information. Okay, Please go on.
So next step, what we're going to do, we're going to define the API gateway with the Lambda function. So it's a very, very common practice to use the API gateway with Lambda as a backend integration, right? So you can just have the API gateway and then trigger the Lambda function. So that is what we're going to do. So we have, if you remember in the last two episodes, we explained about the constructs and like their parameters and stuff. So I'm not going to go through that. If you haven't seen that last two episodes, please feel free to check it out. So here we've got API gateway, Lambda, like Ben mentioned, we're using the REST API, given the ID of the constructs, and we have some properties defined here. So I think we should go over what are those properties and what it does really. So we have here default course pre-flight options. So
throwing it out to the chat, May.
Oh, yeah.
Who likes cores? Who loves cores? Just pointing it out. Does anyone love cross-origin resource sharing?
I want to see the response.
I love cores.
Who was that? Okay, all right. Okay, good job. Okay, so cross-origin resource sharing is an interesting one. One thing to point out that it's a pretty common practice, or at least often you'll see when people are defining cores that they'll often like implement an asterisk like for just allow all. Yeah. Remember, this is a security layer, and we are kind of guilty of that in this example ourselves. But if you're following best practices, you definitely also want to use this as another layer of security and lock it down to the domains that matter. So just wanted to point that out as well.
Because here on the allowed origins, we are allowing all origins. So if from the security perspective, you want to look down, like Ben said, a particular domain that you're using, then you can define it here. But for this demo, we're just using allow origin, the same as the allow methods, right? So it's here we allow all the methods here. So you can define these as you like. You can customize those. So we just talk about pre-flight options, and then we have handler. So handler is basically the Lambda function.
Sorry, I was just reading the chat. Cause isn't a BL, yeah. Cause BL. Anyway, go for it.
That's all good. And then we have a proxy property. So proxy is basically, there is two options, true and false. The proxy setting to true, which is the default value, is to route all the requests to a Lambda function. But what we're trying to do here is setting the proxy to false, because we are going to define the API model to the response back. So we'll go through that in the later code, but for now we're setting the proxy to the false, and then we will define the API model down the track.
Yeah, so that proxy integration, just to let you know, so if you're new to AWS Lambda, one of the options is to set up proxy integration, which basically just sends everything to Lambda, and Lambda's then responsible to reply back with the right response headers and things like that. It can simplify the API component. We're not doing that in this scenario. We're allowing API Gateway to manage the response for us, and we're just passing back the JSON payload that we want to send back.
It's an interesting thing to point out that it's kind of like it's defining the boundary between those components. So this is the API gateway, like in this demo, in this use case, this is the API gateway responsibility to define the response model. Yeah. But in your case, it could be a Lambda is handling all of these, the response. So cool. So we have got that. The next step is to what we want to do is integrate these Lambda function to the API gateway. So I have a little snippet. This is a long one.
Is it time for the BuzzerPie API challenge?
It is.
Okay, good. Thanks, Olivia. Okay.
All right. We'll come back to this later, and let's do a BuzzerPie API.
So if you are new to the show, if you were here last week, you know how this works. If you're new to the show, what we're going to do is bring up a question on the screen, and all you need to do is type exactly the answer into the chat. And if you are the winner, what's going to happen is that you're going to set off what is essentially behind me, which looks like this. And it's essentially my Raspberry Pi. We're using GPIO connector. We've got a buzzer and also an LED, or actually a fluoro light attached to this thing. And so it's just going to set this off in the background here. If you answer correctly, it's going to turn on the cloud, which is pretty amazing for a Raspberry Pi. So this is more just...
The winner is going to turn on the cloud and make a really noisy buzz at Ben's place.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is switch over to the question. As soon as you know the answer, type the question into the chat, and let's see who the winner is this week.
Everyone's ready?
Are we ready? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, this is the question. The Amazon API Gateway free tier includes how many API calls received for SAPIs per... Oh,
congratulations at this. You are the winner.
Congratulations, Despot. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm pronouncing it the exact same way as Olivia, but well done. Congratulations. You are the first winner. You do actually receive 1 million requests free per month. It's pretty awesome. The free tier, if you haven't played with AWS, a lot of these services that we're using are... You get really generous amounts to play with this on the free tier, like 1 million Lambda invocations and things like that. Go and play, build, best way to learn. Definitely encourage you to do that. And congratulations being the winner. Well done. You are awesome. Okay. All right. Nice. All right. Perfect. All right. Back to it. That's awesome. Well done.
Back to the show.
That was super fast. That was really quick.
That was the first answer. I was surprised.
That was quick. Done, that's not nice. And I made it turn itself off this time, John. I know that it was frustrating you. The ringing noise was angering John in the background there, one of our mods. And so I set a timer this time to turn itself off instead of... So I hope you appreciate that, John. That was a lot of coding to do that. I had to add a sleep.
It was angering me too.
Okay, good. All right, nice. All right, go for it, mate.
All right, so let's do the Lambda integration. So we'll have a Lambda integration to start integrating with the Lambda function with the API gateway. So here's a few things that we define here, right? So the Lambda integration construct, we set the proxy false, and we have a request parameter. So request parameter is basically to define a mapping from this method to the Lambda integration. In this case, it's a service Lambda. So if you remember, or if you haven't seen the show, episode 2, we went through the service Lambda. Have a look at it, what service Lambda does, and its service Lambda is expecting these two values, the query string, which is the action and then the key. So these are the two the parameters that we are requesting from the user to pass it on and pass it to the API. Lambda. So these are two parameters we are requesting it from. And then we have a request template. So request template is to define a payload for this integration. So we have set the payload format to be a JSON, application JSON. And we have two value. So that is the action and then the key that we define in the request.
Yeah. And so just to point out, because we are using, Amazon API Gateway, a part of the RESTful API component is that we can do validation and mapping. So the idea is that we can have our API endpoint that will validate the requests and map them to the whatever the backend service is expecting, things like that. Also adds things like caching. We can cache at the API level to reduce the overhead. So we've got a lot of GET requests. We can cache that at the API level to really reduce the overhead on the backend infrastructure and things like that.
That's there are a lot of fine tuning in terms of performance or the security that you can set it here, but we haven't included in this demo. But there are tons of properties that you can set
cache
to
again, please. Cache.
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 You say cache, I say cache. Cache.
Caching.
Yeah, that's one of those words. Tomato, potato, potato. How do we say it?
Caching.
Okay.
We know the caching.
Cache is like what you use at the shop to buy things. But to buy Vegemite, like you go to the shop with cash to buy Vegemite. That's how it works. Cache is what you do when... Okay, sorry. Don't get me started.
We can cache it later. Okay. We have pass-through behavior. So the job of the pass-through behavior is
I'm a happy little Vegemite.
Thank you. I'm a little Vegemite. And pass-through behavior is basically for the incoming request. So you have the API gateway, the incoming request based on the content type that you have in that request. And then we have the mapping templates that we define. Ben's having so much fun.
I know. I just like that. Yeah, okay. It's all right. So, it's all good.
We have here, we can define those pass-through behavior. And for now, we have defined it when there's no template. And you can see the options of the pass-through behavior, what to do when there is no match or when there's no template, or reject the request when there is template not defined. So that kind of option, we can define that. But for here, we have, say, pass-through behavior with no template. Then we get to the interesting point of integration response. So that is the response the API gateway will get from the Lambda function. So we have only two responses that we define. One is the success is the status code 200, and response parameter with, if you remember, we have talked about course. We set to access control allow origin with stars, which allowed all of that. The access control allow origin from the other origin as well.
Yeah.
Then we have a status code 500. So the selection patterns here, as well, it is self-explanatory. There is the comment here, so to check if the error message is not empty, and then we get the response back with 500 to the user. So
let's try it, Timmy Toidle.
It's okay. I was just helping in the chat.
Nice one. So that's pretty much for the API gateway to integrate with the Lambda function. But we have to define what the API gateway requests are that Ben's mentioned. So there are two requests that we have to build. One is get and another is delete. So let's go then build out those two requests. So we have integrated that. And the next one is to get the get request. Oops, where's my CDK? Cool. So this is the API gateway get. We'll go through that again. So we have the API as the root of images. So if you remember in the band architecture diagram, we have like images. That's going to go as the root.
Cool. So just question in chat, what does speak do? So we've set that up for mods. It's kind of an interesting one because what it does is it takes the input from anything after speak, that text string, and it basically makes an API call out to a service that we have in AWS called Amazon Poly. And Amazon Poly synthesizes text to speech. So we then grab that audio stream, save that to an MP3 file, and then play it out using another library.
It's so I can take over from Ben and May if their microphone fails.
That's totally true. It's backup support, and it's so everyone can talk with an Aussie accent if they want to. So you guys have Aussie. So as a viewer, you've got Aussie. What else have we got out there? We've got Vegemite. We've got No Worries. You can try some of those.
No worries.
You want to talk with an Aussie accent?
It's too much fun.
That's just me mucking
No
around.
worries, mate.
There you go.
No worries, mate. Cool. So we're talking about the get API, right? So we have the add resources. We're going back to the code. We have add resources. The root of the API is going to be images, and then from the image API we add method.
Yeah.
We have get methods, as we mentioned. 2 request parameter that we go through the action and keys. So we make it like it is the customer has to put in those 2 parameters when they make a request.
Yeah.
And then method response is pretty simple, 200 and 500, and setting it's the cross allow origin to be true.
Sorry, RobiTech, what we have done for the moment, just in the chat there, is we've allowed just the speak one, only available to moderators for the moment. It's not that we don't trust our viewers, but we don't know what you're going to type in. So it's so at the moment we're sort of moderating that part.
Yeah.
But we've got those fixed commands you can type in.
Yeah.
So if typo,
No worries, mate.
No worries, mate. Or
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. So
all right.
The second API, the delete API. So let's build the delete API. So same way we have, if you look at it, these two are very similar in the way that we set it up, right? So the only things we change is the add methods to be delete, and we integrate with the refer back to the Lambda integration that we define here. And that gets you the template, that gets you set, like defining the parameters and response and things like that. So that's pretty much what we have. So what we built here is the API gateway with 2 the get method and then the delete method. We integrate that with Lambda. So when the API gateway get requested, Lambda can be triggered. So the very simple way to construct these in the CDK. So next step, what we're going to do, so that's pretty much for the coding bits. We're done with the coding. And next step is to deploy this and test it out, see if that's really work. So jumping back to my terminal and clearing that.
So this will be interesting. Did you make any typos, May?
I might.
We'll see.
I might. Just running this CDK.
I mean, you're running pretty safe when we're using snippets.
Is that a typographical error?
There we go. All right, so that's synthesizing properly. If you missed episode 1, we're using the AWS Cloud Development Kit. So go and check it out. It's a great way of defining our infrastructure as code using familiar programming languages. This is synthesizing out to full canonical CloudFormation. So
sorry, Ben.
I can't draw if you keep moving the screen. Okay, so that's fine. You're good. I'm done. I'm out.
Well, what Ben's trying to say is this is the CloudFormation templates that CDK generated. Is that right?
Yeah. That is right.
And CDK diff because I want to say I'm working on the episode 2 branch, right? So if you can see on the Git episode, I'm working on the episode 2 branch from the GitHub repo.
Yes.
And I'm building this out. So I want to see what I have deployed, or we have deployed in the previous episode, and what we're going to deploy in this episode. So you can see the difference of what we have been adding, allowing some rules, Lambda function, adding some of the stuff, API gateway.
And it's a great call out too, right? Because when we do a CDK diff and do a CDK deploy, CDK diff's going to tell us what's changed. And so, but when we do a CDK deploy, it's going to take those changes and it's going to make them happen in your account using CloudFormation. So it's a really nice way of doing it. And so, if you make a change to your Lambda function, for example, and do a CDK deploy, it'll go and repackage that function, re-archive that into a zip file, upload it to your staging bucket, and redeploy it into Lambda. And so it kind of takes care of some of that. But we are going to go in later on in the series, and we're going to go and build a proper CI/CD pipeline for this application well. Yeah.
It should be interesting because we're testing it out with CDK pipeline. So we're not using other pipelines.
So CDK, sorry, that's probably my accent. What we're talking about here is the Amazon Web Services AWS Cloud Development Kit. CDK is just because I'm talking really quickly and you probably don't quite pick up the Aussie accent version, but CDK.
Yeah, CDK
Charlie
deploy.
Delta Kilo. Charlie Delta Kilo. All right, good. Okay, let's do that.
So this is what we're going to deploy and the changes that we have made. So some IAM statement changes, as you can see, and some policy changes. And we deployed it into their account. So as you can see, this might take a few minutes. Start creating the CloudFormation, creating change set, and it will print out what has been generated from the CloudFormation.
Yes.
So we're going to two testing, right? One is for what we're going to test from the browser. So we're going to test from the API gateway, the AWS Management Console to test it out.
Yes.
And we are going to test from the CLI just to see how it works, not just relying on the API Gateway Management Console. So once it's deployed successfully, fingers crossed, hope it's deployed successfully. And once it's deployed, we will upload the image like we did in the previous show, because this is the new deployment that I did earlier this morning just to start prepping. So there's nothing in the bucket. So I'm going to start uploading images to get ready for the testing, and then start calling the APIs.
Can you still taste Vegemite, May?
Yeah, I can still, like, the corner of my mouth sometimes. It just,
Just pointing it out. I can too. Okay, good.
Cool.
All right. So successful. We love green arrows.
Deployed,
that makes us happy.
Yeah.
Relief.
Good. DynamoDB. If you can see, there is the API endpoint that's generated. Image bucket, resize bucket. So that's all good. Nothing really changed.
So that's new this week. So we've got our API endpoint now. So this is how we can integrate with our Lambda function from externally from our RESTful API. Now, one thing to point out is that at this point, we're not securing the API. You'll notice that it's open, it's not secured. Next episode, we're going to go and implement Amazon Cognito user pools, and we're going to go and secure down our API and integrate start working through our front end React application to start integrating with this. So we will lock it down. So just calling it out there at the moment. Just be mindful.
It's a really good point, because we haven't had any authentication authorization put in place, and from the best practices, we should be putting into some sort of for this episode, we will be doing Cognito. Allow only the Cognito user to access to these API requests. So that kind of security in mind from the best practices. So cool. That's a really good point also. So what I did was I just uploaded the test images into the S3 buckets. So that should be in the S3 buckets. And now let's
Please don't tell me you used the same kangaroo image from last week, mate.
It is the same
Oh,
kangaroo
come
image.
on. Variety is the spice of life. Okay. All right. Use the same
Maybe
one.
I should
That's
have
fine.
used the Vegemite image.
That yeah. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but sure. Okay. Let's do that.
Cool. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen. Just making sure I share the right screen.
Sure.
Can you all see my console?
We can now. Yes. We've got it.
Cool. So,
right.
So this is my CloudFormation stack. I have some stack here. It was dev hour stack. What I'm going to do is I want to go over to API Gateway.
Sure.
And check out the API that we deployed and see if that's loading properly. So image API. So if you remember /images, that is the root of the images that we defined. Now we have two methods. So image get and delete. So let's test with the get method. So I'm just going to test it from the management console, but we were going to test it from the. So if you haven't noticed the feature here on the management console, you can test the API. You can see the method request integration and also the Lambda that is being also integrated with this API. So and then the response and method response. So it's pretty handy when you want to do a quick test and then see how is your API is behaving.
And of course, this is publicly exposed at the moment. So, like, if you want to go and test this, I don't know if you want to just also paste the curl command into the chat, just so that if people want to go and run a test for this externally, you want to go and just make a curl request to the API. It should work. It's not authenticated at this point, so you should be able to get the tags back with that.
Cool. So now what I'm doing now is the query string. So if you remember, we have two query strings that we passed on, the action and the key. So the action is the get labels and the key is the image name. So just to test it out, cool. So if you can see, maybe I should zoom in a little. If you can see here, we have the request with the parameters. The status is 200. And this is the response back from the Lambda to the API gateway. And some of the response headers and things. So it seems like it works. And
that's one of your million requests there, May. Just you better start counting, I'm just saying. Go for it.
I know.
Okay, all right.
It reset at every month, so I should be okay.
Just test. Just
test.
Build it up. Okay.
So let's test on the delete method. So let's try it on. Where action is the delete image and the key is the test and see what responds back.
Yeah.
Oh.
Beautiful.
So,
all right. Processed.
200 response status code and then the response. So that's cool. That works. Cool. That works fine. Now let's go back to the console and test it from the CLI and see how it works. I might have to change my screen sharing. So bear with me for a second. Cool. So that should do.
All right, we're back with the screen share, May. So we've got your CLI.
Awesome.
So for anyone that wants to try this out at home as well, so you may, I don't know if you want to pop in the endpoint into the chat as well, but it'll just be like curl -uppercase X, and then you can put in the endpoint with the query string. So we'll paste the whole thing into the chat, May, I guess, if that's...
Yeah, I will pop it in.
I'm pretty sure with everyone hitting it, we're still not going to hit the limit there. All right, so...
And so that is
you'll need to probably...
And then I need that.
You'll need to wrap it in quotes as well as put... you got the query string, good, yep.
Oops, yeah.
Cool. And have you got a quote at the front of it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Cool.
So that gives the response back. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pop it into the chat as well.
Yeah, do that so we can get some...
copy that.
You can then absolutely delete May's image as well. That's okay.
Yeah, if I delete, I won't be able to. Oops, I won't be able to retrieve it again. Cool. So what I'm gonna do is next one, delete and get the same thing.
Before you delete it though, people might be testing it.
Oh, that's right. I'll give a couple of minutes if you want to
just wait. Looks like
Yeah.
people are testing it and it works. So let's give it a few minutes before you go and destroy their hopes and dreams on them. It's so frustrating if it's not there. We'll get a key error.
Yay! Oh, thanks for
Nice, yippee! All right,
testing it out for us. That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
Cool. So now we want to delete. So there are a couple of ways to test it, right? So we can use other third-party tool like Postman to test it, or use the CLI, and even a management console. So
now, one thing to call out.
Test it out.
One thing to call out, and just going back to the comparison, if you do go and look into AppSync as an example as well, GraphQL also supports what we call introspection, which means that you can see what's available automatically, essentially via the API. So you kind of need to know here what we're building up. Doesn't have introspection in REST as well, but
that's right.
All good.
Awesome. So let's test it on the delete to see how it works. Cool.
Okay.
So
Nice.
that works. I want to test it if that works for the failure scenario. So if I change something else, you got the error message. Cool, that's good. I'm just testing the failure scenario where you change the action to not get labels and delete image, try something else, and then you got the error message saying the action's not detected or recognized.
Yeah, that's right. So
Cool. That's about it for the API gateway. So we tested, we deployed it. Next one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do CDK destroy just to remove all the the stack that we created.
So someone just posted an error message in there. So so that key error is basically the response that's coming back because the Maze deleted the image. So when you do a request using that get, if the image isn't there, it's going to the key error because there's no image there. It's just coming up with an error. Can't find that item essentially. So that's why you're getting that error message. Maze kangaroo's gone. Sorry.
Hey, kangaroos. I'll get something next week. Maybe I'll get a puppy.
A puppy, people like puppies.
Image.
Yeah. All right, let's do that.
Awesome.
Okay, so we're destroying the stack. So that's basically the API component. So next week, as we mentioned, we're going to be going in and building the authentication around this. So we're going to go and use Amazon Cognito. We're going to go and create a Cognito user pool. We're going to integrate that into our application, lock down the API so that we can't make these random requests from everywhere over the web. And the idea is we'll lock that down and we'll integrate our front-end application from a Cognito perspective in the next episode. So we'll start the front end in the next episode.
That's right. So we get to the stage we're slowly building around it. So we build the backend, we have the application ready. Now we're slowly putting in place of like security. That's next week, and then there will be more stuff that we're going to build upon what we have now. So make sure you join us next week, same time.
Yes, same time next week. And there is some homework. So we've popped in LinkedIn this before the show. It should already be there if the mods just want to pop in, or if somebody out there wants to type in !homework homework into the chat. It'll bring you the URL that you can connect to. So the idea is that go and check that out. What we're asking for this week is what sort of API what's your favorite type to use? Do you like REST? Do you like GraphQL? Do you like gRPC? And why? Like what are the use cases around that? So just open discussion. We all have different favorites kind of that we get used to using. A lot of us are very used to REST, but if you are using Graph already, or if you're using gRPC for microservices or whatever, just let us know. Be cool to see what you're all doing out there.
In the next show.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Ooh, thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the show. Have some fun challenge, and there will be more challenge and different quizzes or poll work coming up in the next week.
Absolutely, and yeah, definitely. If you're new again to the show, go and check out the first couple of episodes. Again, if you type in !episodes into the chat, it'll give you the link for the last episodes. You can go and check them out. I think it's episodes with an S. Try that, maybe. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's my Aussie accent ruining it for you again. So check it out. I win. Nice. Okay, you do win. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining the episode again. We hope that was useful for you. Go and check out the other services as well. If you're looking at building a production application, we definitely suggest you go and check out HTTP APIs as well. See if they follow the feature set that you're looking for. And go and check out AppSync. It's a really amazing service. And if you haven't played with GraphQL APIs yet, go and check it out. It's a really awesome way of getting synchronization, offline access, all those sorts of things, real-time data and really complex data models and things like that. So hope everyone has an awesome week, and we will catch you the same time next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Owen.
Thanks, May.
No worries,
next time.
mate.
No worries, mate.
mate.
See ya.
See ya.